Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and in case you were wondering, in case you had the worry, the understandable concern that Indiana Jones may be turned into a soy boy in Indiana Jones 5, well, it looks like we've got our confirmation here. Let's take a look at this article. James Mangold admits he's maligning Indiana Jones' character, says audiences will have to readjust and retool their brains for this guy, because that's what everybody wants with Indiana Jones' final outing, a character that's not Indiana Jones, isn't Indiana Jones in name only, can't even say in face only, because clearly the face is not his, it's a CGI gobbledygook de-aging mess. But let's go through the article and see if there's any salvaging this horrible film. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny director James Mangold admitted what many feared that he, Disney, and Lucasfilm would do to Indiana Jones. They are maligning his character in a similar fashion to how Rian Johnson did to Luke Skywalker. I don't think that's an unfair comparison. I mean, I know the film isn't out yet, but I don't think it's an unfair comparison. The only hope, the only little grain of hope I have for this is that Harrison Ford is very attached to the Indiana Jones character, and he, I think, would put his foot down if there was some sort of something objectively character ruining that would happen to him. I could be wrong, but that seems to be how he would treat the character because Indiana Jones has been his baby. And I know a lot of you want to jump to, well, you know, he didn't say anything about Crystal Skull. I think the Crystal Skull, at least Indiana Jones as a character, still acts like Indiana Jones. So yeah, maybe we're overreacting because, and not putting our faith in Harrison Ford, but I doubt it. Let's continue. Speaking with The Hollywood Reporter, Mangold stated, "We can't hide from where we are in our lives. None of us can, and neither can Indiana Jones." No one wants him to hide from where he is in his life. Indiana Jones was never a hider. It would be in character for him to not hide. But we don't want him to be a lame old man soy boy. We don't want him to be having existential crises or anything like that, because if it's gonna be Indiana Jones' last romp, we want it to be fun, and we want the character that we've loved for, well, I mean, if you've been around since when Indiana Jones, began, since the early 80s, we want that intact for the final outing. He elaborated, "I wanted to follow Harrison's own lead and simply deal with it straight on. It's not just a movie about a hero in his twilight years who is called back into action. It should be. It's more than just his bones might ache, it's that his soul might ache, and that some of his optimism or sense of fitting into the world might have evaporated," he detailed. Now, in a way, I can understand this. People have been saying it for a while, myself included. This new movie takes place during the 60s. Indiana Jones, the character from the 30s, probably would feel out of place in the 60s. Now, would he be being sad about it? Would he be a little whiny old baby about it? No, and I wonder if that's what we're going to see. Indiana Jones would be angry and defiant, and he would mock the weakness that came out of individuals in the 60s, talking about, frankly, the way that I've been talking about him, soy boys, pansies, whatever, terminology he would use. Obviously, they wouldn't say soy boys back in the 60s, but the point is, Indiana Jones would very much be mocking the weakness of the, cultural movement and stuff that's going on in the 60s, at least a majority of it, I would think, and that's where he should be. So if he's gonna have questions about whether he fits into the world, that's fine, but do it in character. Mangold then justified his decision to malign the character, saying, "The mistake you can make in movies, and we've all seen movies like this, is where someone is of a ripe age, but the entire movie is continuing this charade along with them that they're not that old." Yeah, I guess maybe that can be a worry, but we don't want... When you see someone old and you see someone feeble, why should we care about them instead? We don't want to feel sorry for Indiana Jones. We want to root for Indiana Jones. You're not going to have us root for Indiana Jones if you're focusing on the fact that he's old and feeble. That's just not how it works. This is a ridiculous explanation. Just because someone ages does not mean they would lose their sense of optimism or have their soul ache. Certainly someone like Indiana Jones would not act this way, especially after having seen the example of his father act in the complete opposite way. That's completely fair. Indiana Jones did in fact see his rather old-aged father literally go on, I don't know, a last crusade with him to find the Holy Grail, and he was optimistic and hard fighting. And now, granted, he wasn't Indiana Jones; they were polar opposite characters, and that was the point. But the optimism of that old age was clearly there, and yeah, Dr. Jones Sr. was supposed to be old. There wasn't much of an age difference between the actors, but he was supposed to be old. He was Indy's dad. Mangold would further reveal he's moving away from the tried-and-true action-adventure formula that led to the success of the original Indiana Jones trilogy. He said, the first 3 Indiana Jones movies took place in roughly the same period. They all easily fit in with the serialized, theatrical, almost screwball action style of the movies that were being released in the period they're set in. Oh my goodness. Okay. This movie's officially dead to me. I'm not gonna, I already wasn't gonna see it. I might stand outside the theater and like pay people to not see it. Like, yeah, no, just got tickets for Indiana Jones. How much did you pay? $14.95? Here's a $20. Don't support it. You know, they make a nice little $4 profit, and I save the world like the damn superhero I am. Mangold then posited, the challenge for director Steven Spielberg on Crystal Skull, and for me on this one, is how do you move forward into the new decades where the world is no longer seen in such clear demarcations of black and white and good and evil? The world in real life wasn't seen like that then. Movies give you that luxury, though, because it's this sort of pulpy adventure series, and you can keep that pulp adventure sensibility because it's a movie, because it's not the real world. You think that the real world just operated on the basis of black and white and good and evil in the 30s, and then the 40s happened, and then we were all of a sudden like, never mind, black and white, good and evil, that's out the window. Now we got some shades of gray. There's been shades of gray since out human history. But in the movies, you don't have to acknowledge them because you can just have fun. You can just tell a story. Where the whole concept of raiding tombs and fighting over relics is looked at in a different way. It's not about changing the story, but allowing the character to experience how the world has changed around him, Mangold explained. Yeah, that sounds nice on paper. That sounds all nice and frilly, but it's word salad unless we see the implementation and it be done with respect, and I just don't think you're up to the task, Mangold. Mangold went on to push the idea that everything is gray now, and somehow in the past it was all black and white. Yeah, literally what I said. I'm a freaking psychic. Which any historian worth his salt would point out is a complete and utter lie. He told The Hollywood Reporter, and our perception of politics is more gray. Who's a villain? Who are we working with? Who are we fighting against? Proxy wars, all of that. It's not as simple as the era around World War II. Bro, you are a moron. James Mangold, I mean... Yeah, man is in the name, because if we're to believe modern-day sitcoms, men are always morons, and trust me, Mangold here is a moron. What happens to a hero built for a black and white world when he finds himself in one that's gray? It's a problem that produces humor, produces contradictions, produces adjustments, and the character's going to have to make. All of this reads like they're pitching a Marvel film. Every line, every word, and that's sickening. Indiana Jones is not a GD MCU film. This might be the dumbest thing Mangold tells The Hollywood Reporter. The world has not suddenly become gray. Morality still exists, good and evil still exist. They haven't all of a sudden evaporated in less than a century. A character like Indiana Jones would choose the right thing. He would have a strong moral compass. He would still see things as black and white, as good and evil. He wouldn't buy into the idea that there's somehow a morally gray area, because there isn't. Indiana Jones is a man who came in direct contact with the Ark of the Covenant as well as the Holy Grail. He knows fully well God does indeed exist. And that's completely fair. This is also true. He also came into contact with some weird Hindu stuff that was going on. Kali. So he knows that multiple religions exist. So yeah, I would say that he's very well aware of moral compasses, good and evil, karma, any of that stuff. Speaking of the fact that actor Harrison Ford will be de-aged in the opening of the film shows Jones in his glory days, Mangold says it reminds the audience the contrast between a hero in his physical prime and a hero at 70. We're not relying solely on audience's memory of the previous films. It reminds everyone what he's done, what he's survived, and what he's accomplished, Mangold relays. He then notes, by showing him in his most hardy and finding him at 70 in New York City, it produces for the audience a kind of wonderful whiplash of what they're going to have to readjust and retool their brains for this guy. His past and live memory for the audience, hanging over a man who's now living with anonymity in a world that no longer cares or recognizes the things he felt so deeply about. What, did people just stop caring about archaeology and finding museum pieces and whatnot when the 60s hit? I get the civil rights movement was important, but I'm pretty sure if we found some cool Egyptian sarcophagi, that would still be in the papers. Mangold elaborates, you're left with a multi-layered perception of this character, both what he was and what he is, and how the world is different between the first 20 minutes of the movie. So not only is he maligning Jones' character, he's going to make sure you know just how much he's maligning the character. It's a rather bold move. We'll see how it plays out for him. One thing that won't change, at least according to Mangold, is Jones' problem-solving skills. Indy's always looking to find the easy way out of a conflict. He uses his brain to solve the puzzle in the midst of something threatening his life. He's not a character who is built on being a gunslinger or a Marvel-y-style brawny muscle hero. He's always looked for the quickest way out of a situation, and that only increases when you're 70. So he needs to find ingenious ways out of a problem increases. I'm supposed to probably say as a problem increases. the director said. Mangold's confession shouldn't surprise anyone who's watched the first Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer. The trailer made a point to show that Indiana Jones was a beaten-down man. A voiceover from John Rhys Davis, Sala, tells Jones, "I miss the desert, I miss the sea, and I miss waking up every morning wondering what wonderful adventure the new day would bring us." A defeated Jones replies, "Those days have come and gone." Yeah, people have said their piece about the issues with that opening from Sala. I tend to agree with them, but we'll touch on that some other time. We're already getting pretty lengthy here. What do you make of Mangold's confession that he is maligning Indiana Jones' character and did so purposely? Well, I'm sure y'all want to hear. I'll tell you what I think. This is a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. This movie doesn't need to exist. This movie never should have existed. I mean, we got no Lucas. We got no Spielberg. We have James Mangold, who at the end of the day is actually a great and very competent director, but who knows if he's been infected with modern-day Hollywood politics, and he's under the boot of Kathleen Kennedy. This movie is going to be an absolute sham. It's going to be a shell of what Indiana Jones, actually used to be. If anything, this movie is going to make the Crystal Skull look like a damn masterpiece. Is that really what you want? You want the final Indiana Jones film to make Crystal Skull look back and, oh man, maybe it wasn't that bad. Like people all of a sudden, people who weren't me, because I've always been a prequels defender, people all of a sudden became ardent prequel defenders for Star Wars when the new Disney movies came out. And you sat there and you're like, man, I defended those movies for years. All of a sudden they're cool now, and then you were happy with it because you know what? At least people finally realized they are better than people give them credit for. Not perfect, but better than people give them credit for. I cannot believe we're about to see the same thing happen to Crystal Skull. Mark my words, that's where we're at. I'm going to clip this if I need to. Mark my words, in a couple of years, we're going to see people defending the Crystal Skull movie. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, then I don't know what will. But that's just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments below, or let me know on Twitter where you can follow me at BoltTheWord. I cover nerdy news every day, so please subscribe and check out the back catalog. I've got stuff on Magic the Gathering, Star Wars, anime, movies, the whole nine. So please subscribe, because it's all here in the nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.